Imagine your local library, a haven for knowledge, suddenly silenced. That's exactly what happened in our small town. But what happened next was truly unexpected, especially coming from someone you'd least suspect. The swing moved back and forth in the empty playground, carrying a small girl whose eyes held the weight of the world. 6-year-old Isabella Morrison sat motionless, her tiny hands gripping the chains, staring at nothing while other children laughed and played around her. She had not spoken a single word in 8 months, not since the day her mother died in that terrible car accident. The doctor said there was nothing physically wrong with her vocal cords. The trauma had simply stolen her voice, leaving behind a shell of the bubbly child she once was. From his black luxury sedan parked across the street, James Morrison watched his daughter with a breaking heart. The most powerful CEO in the city, a man who commanded boardrooms and made million-dollar decisions without blinking, sat helpless as his only child slipped further into silence each day. He had tried everything the best therapist's money could buy: expensive toys, trips to Disneyland, even hiring a full-time nanny who specialized in traumatized children. Nothing worked. Isabella remained locked in her silent world, unreachable despite being right there in front of him. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the playground as James checked his watch. They had been here for 30 minutes, their daily ritual that accomplished nothing except proving his failure as a father. He was about to get out and collect Isabella when something caught his attention. A young African-American woman approached the swing set, gently pushing her own son on the swing next to Isabella's. The woman had kind eyes and a warm smile that seemed to light up her entire face. What happened next made James lean forward in his seat, hardly believing what he was seeing. The woman looked at Isabella and simply said, "Hi there, beautiful. I'm Nicole and this is my son, Trevor. Would you like to swing together?" She didn't expect an answer, didn't push for a response. Instead, she began a gentle conversation with her own son while including Isabella with glances and smiles. After a few minutes, something miraculous occurred. Isabella turned her head and looked directly at Nicole. It was the first time in months that his daughter had shown interest in another person. Nicole seemed to sense Isabella's attention and reached over to adjust the girl's jacket with the natural care of a mother. "That's a pretty dress," she said softly. "Purple is my favorite color, too." Isabella didn't speak, but her grip on the swing chains loosened slightly. For the first time since the accident, James saw something other than emptiness in his daughter's eyes. There was curiosity, maybe even the hint of trust. As the minutes passed, Nicole continued her gentle approach. She pulled out a small bag of crackers and offered some to Isabella, who shook her head but didn't look away. Nicole's son, Trevor, who appeared to be about 7 years old, began showing Isabella how to pump her legs to swing higher. The woman never pushed, never demanded anything from Isabella, but her presence seemed to create a safe bubble around both children. James felt something he hadn't experienced in months: hope. This stranger was achieving what teams of expensive professionals could not. She was reaching his daughter through simple kindness and patience. When Nicole began to pack up to leave, Isabella's face fell and she gripped the swing chains tighter again. The woman noticed immediately and knelt beside the swing. "We come here every Tuesday and Thursday after school," Nicole said gently. "Maybe we'll see you again." Isabella nodded, actually nodded, and James felt tears sting his eyes. His daughter had communicated, had shown she wanted something. It was a breakthrough that seemed impossible just an hour ago. As Nicole and Trevor walked away, Isabella watched them until they disappeared around the corner. Only then did she look toward James' car, and for the first time in months, she climbed down from the swing and walked toward him without being called. When she reached the car, she pointed in the direction Nicole had gone and looked at James with questioning eyes. "Yes, sweetheart," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "We'll come back on Thursday." Isabella nodded again and got into the car. As they drove home, James kept glancing in the rearview mirror at his daughter. She was looking out the window with more alertness than he'd seen since the accident. Something had changed in those precious minutes with Nicole, something that gave him the first real hope he felt since losing his wife. That night, as James tucked Isabella into bed in her pink princess room, she did something that made his heart stop. She pointed to the window and then touched her chest. It took him a moment to understand she was asking about Nicole, wondering if they would see her again. The fact that Isabella was thinking about someone else, caring about seeing them again, was more progress than months of therapy had achieved. "We'll see Nicole on Thursday," James promised, kissing his daughter's forehead. Isabella smiled, a real smile, small but genuine, and closed her eyes. As James left her room, he made a decision. He was going to find out everything he could about Nicole and figure out how to keep her in Isabella's life. Whatever it took, whatever it cost, he would not let this opportunity slip away. His daughter had shown life again, and he would do anything to nurture that spark back into a flame. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. James found himself checking his watch every few minutes throughout the day, something he had never done when anticipating a playground visit before. He left the office early, telling his secretary to cancel his remaining meetings, a decision that would have shocked his business partners who knew James Morrison as a man married to his work. When they arrived at the playground, James parked in the same spot and watched as Isabella practically bounced in her car seat. She was looking around eagerly, searching for Nicole and Trevor. The change in his daughter's demeanor was remarkable. Instead of the usual reluctant trudging to the swing set, Isabella walked with purpose. Hope, lighting her steps. At exactly 3:30, Nicole appeared around the corner with Trevor just as she had said she would. Isabella saw them first and did something that made James grip the steering wheel in amazement. She waved. It was a small gesture, barely more than raising her hand. But it was communication. It was connection. It was life. Nicole waved back with genuine enthusiasm. As if Isabella was an old friend she was excited to see again. Isabella, she called out, somehow knowing the girl's name, though James was certain they hadn't introduced themselves properly on Tuesday. I was hoping you'd be here. Trevor has been asking about his new swing buddy all week. As Nicole approached, James noticed details he had missed before. She wore simple clothes, jeans and a comfortable sweater, but carried herself with dignity and grace. Her smile was infectious, and there was something about her presence that made the whole playground seem brighter. She had brought a small backpack, and from it, she pulled out a thermos and some cups. I brought hot chocolate, Nicole announced to both children. The weather's getting cool, and warm drinks always make everything better. She poured steaming chocolate into paper cups and handed one to Trevor, then offered another to Isabella. James held his breath, wondering if his daughter would accept it. Isabella reached out and took the cup with both hands, bringing it close to her chest like a treasure. Careful, it's hot, Nicole warned gently, demonstrating by blowing on her own cup. Isabella mimicked the action, and when she took her first sip, her eyes widened with pleasure. She looked at Nicole and nodded enthusiastically, the most animated response James had seen from her since the accident. Nicole settled onto a bench near the swings, and Trevor immediately climbed onto the swing beside Isabella's. My mom makes the best hot chocolate in the world, Trevor announced proudly. She puts extra marshmallows in it. Isabella looked at Nicole with something James recognized as gratitude, though she still didn't speak. Trevor, why don't you show Isabella how to go really high on the swings? Nicole suggested. As the children began swinging, Nicole pulled out a book and began reading aloud. Not to anyone in particular, but in a way that naturally included both children. It was a story about a little girl who found magic in everyday things. And though Isabella continued swinging, James could see her listening intently. After about 20 minutes, something unprecedented happened. Isabella slowed her swing and pointed to the book in Nicole's hands. Nicole looked up with understanding and patted the bench beside her. Would you like to see the pictures? Isabella nodded and climbed down from the swing. Walking over to sit next to Nicole, James watched in wonder as his daughter snuggled against this near stranger's side, something she hadn't done with anyone since her mother died. Nicole adjusted her arm to make Isabella more comfortable and continued reading, pointing to the colorful illustrations as she went. Isabella's eyes were bright and focused, drinking in every word and image. When Nicole turned a page showing a little girl hugging her mother, Isabella's face grew sad, but she didn't pull away. Instead, Nicole seemed to sense the moment and said gently, sometimes the people we love have to go away, but the love stays right here in our hearts forever. Isabella looked up at Nicole with wide, trusting eyes and nodded. Then, in a gesture that brought tears to James's eyes, Isabella placed her small hand over her own heart and then over Nicole's heart. Nicole's eyes filled with tears, too, but she smiled and covered Isabella's hand with her own. That's right, sweet girl. Love stays. Trevor, who had been swinging quietly nearby, came over and joined them on the bench. My dad is in heaven, too, he said matter-of-factly, but Mom says he watches over us and sends us good things like new friends. He smiled at Isabella, and she smiled back, the biggest smile James had seen from her in months. As the afternoon drew to a close, Nicole began packing up her things. Isabella's face fell, and she gripped the book they had been reading. Nicole noticed immediately and knelt down to Isabella's level. Would you like to borrow this book until we see each other again? Isabella nodded eagerly and hugged the book to her chest. I'll bring a new story on Tuesday, and you can tell me if you like this one. Isabella nodded again and then did something that made James' heart nearly stop. She leaned forward and hugged Nicole, a real hug full of trust and affection. Nicole hugged her back gently, whispering, I'm so happy I met you. Isabella, you're a very special little girl. As Nicole and Trevor prepared to leave, Trevor turned to Isabella and said, see you Tuesday, Bella. It was a nickname no one had used since Isabella's mother died, but somehow it sounded perfect coming from this kind boy. Isabella waved goodbye, clutching her borrowed book and watching until they disappeared around the corner again. When Isabella finally walked to the car, she was a different child than the one who had arrived an hour earlier. She held the book carefully and looked at James with bright eyes. As they drove home, she kept looking at the book's cover, tracing the pictures with her finger. That night, she fell asleep with the book beside her pillow, and for the first time in months, James didn't hear her crying in her sleep. The weekend felt endless as Isabella carried Nicole's book everywhere, studying each page as if it contained the secrets of the universe. James watched his daughter with growing amazement as she displayed more life and interest than she had since the accident. She even attempted to read parts of the story aloud to her stuffed animals. Though no actual words came out, just expressive sounds that suggested she was trying to tell the story in her own way. By Monday evening, Isabella was practically vibrating with anticipation for their Tuesday playground visit. She had picked out her favorite purple dress and had James help her pack a small bag with some of her own books, apparently planning to share with Nicole, just as Nicole had shared with her. When Tuesday finally arrived, they reached the playground early. Isabella positioned herself on the swing and watched the corner where Nicole would appear, her borrowed book safely tucked in her lap. James remained in the car, but found himself watching for Nicole with almost as much anticipation as his daughter. At 3:30 sharp, Nicole and Trevor appeared, and Isabella's face lit up like Christmas morning. She waved enthusiastically, and Nicole waved back with equal enthusiasm. "Isabella, I've been looking forward to seeing you again," Nicole called out as she approached. "Did you like the story?" Isabella nodded vigorously and held up the book, then reached into her bag and pulled out 3 books of her own. Nicole's eyes widened with delight. "You brought books to share. How wonderful. I love reading new stories." What happened next left James speechless. Isabella stood up from the swing, walked directly to Nicole, and began turning the pages of one of her books, pointing to different pictures. She wasn't speaking, but she was clearly trying to tell Nicole about the story. Nicole listened with complete attention, responding to Isabella's gestures and expressions as if she could hear every word. "Oh, this looks like an exciting adventure," Nicole said, studying the picture Isabella had pointed to. "And this character looks brave, just like you." Isabella beamed and continued her silent storytelling, growing more animated with each page. Nicole provided a running commentary that perfectly matched Isabella's enthusiasm, creating a conversation even without words from Isabella's side. Trevor joined them, and soon all 3 were sitting on the playground grass surrounded by books. Nicole had brought a small blanket, and they spread it out like a picnic. From her backpack she produced not just hot chocolate this time, but also homemade cookies shaped like letters of the alphabet. "I thought we could play a game," Nicole said, arranging the letter cookies. "We can spell out words and then eat them." Trevor immediately started spelling his name with the cookies, and Isabella watched with fascination. Nicole spelled out Isabella with careful precision, and the little girl's eyes grew wide with delight. Isabella picked up the cookies one by one, studying each letter. When she got to the I, she looked at Nicole and pointed to herself. Nicole nodded encouragingly. "That's right for Isabella. And you know what also means? I am special. I am loved. I am important." Isabella smiled and carefully bit into the cookie as if she was tasting those positive words. As they continued playing with the letter cookies, something magical happened. Isabella began making soft sounds, not quite words, but intentional vocalizations that corresponded to the letters. When she picked up the M cookie, she made a M sound. Nicole's eyes filled with tears of joy, but she kept her voice steady and encouraging. "That's beautiful, Isabella. Makes that exact sound." Nicole picked up an M cookie herself and made the sound, too, and Isabella giggled, the first laugh James had heard from his daughter in 8 months. The sound was like music, and James found himself crying tears of joy in his car. Trevor caught on to the game quickly and began making exaggerated sounds for each letter, which made Isabella laugh even more. Soon, all 3 of them were making silly sounds and dissolving into giggles. Isabella's laughter was rusty from disuse, but it was genuine and full of life. As their letter game continued, Nicole began combining sounds into simple words. "Mom spells mom," she said gently, not pushing but just sharing. Isabella's face grew thoughtful, and she picked up those same 3 cookies. She looked at Nicole for a long moment, then made the sounds very softly. And Nicole's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled radiantly. "That's exactly right. Sweetheart, you're so smart." Isabella looked proud of herself and immediately reached for more letters. Eager to try again, they spent the next 30 minutes working through simple 3-letter words, with Isabella making sounds for many of them. When it was time for Nicole and Trevor to leave, Isabella's progress was remarkable. She was making consistent sounds, laughing regularly, and actively engaging with both Nicole and Trevor. As they packed up, Isabella carefully gathered all her books and Nicole's book, clutching them like treasures. "Same time Thursday?" Nicole asked, and Isabella nodded enthusiastically. Then, to James' absolute amazement, Isabella opened her mouth and made a clear sound. Yes, it was barely a whisper, but it was unmistakably a word. Her first spoken word in 8 months. Nicole knelt down and hugged Isabella gently. "I heard that, beautiful girl. I'll see you Thursday." As Nicole and Trevor walked away, Isabella stood watching them and whispered again, so softly that James almost missed it. By that night, Isabella fell asleep, making soft letter sounds to herself, practicing the sounds Nicole had taught her. James sat in the hallway outside her room, listening to his daughter's voice for the first time since the accident, and knew his life was about to change in ways he never could have imagined. By Thursday, James had made a decision that went against every instinct he developed as a successful CEO who controlled every aspect of his business dealings. He was going to approach Nicole directly, introduce himself properly, and find a way to ensure she remained part of Isabella's life. The progress his daughter had made in just 2 visits was miraculous, and he couldn't bear the thought of losing this connection. Isabella arrived at the playground with a small backpack full of books and a drawing she had made for Nicole, her first artwork since the accident. It was a simple picture of 3 figures, a tall woman with dark skin and a beautiful smile, a boy and a small girl all holding hands under a rainbow. At the bottom, Isabella had attempted to write Nicole and Trevor using the letter sounds Nicole had taught her. When Nicole and Trevor appeared right on schedule, Isabella ran to meet them, actually ran with more energy than James had seen since before the accident. She thrust her drawing at Nicole with pride, making excited sounds that weren't quite words, but clearly conveyed her enthusiasm. Nicole accepted the drawing with reverence, as if Isabella had handed her a priceless masterpiece. "Isabella, this is the most beautiful picture I've ever seen. Is this us?" Isabella nodded eagerly and pointed to each figure, making sounds that approximated names. "Thank you so much, sweetheart. I'm going to treasure this forever." Nicole carefully tucked the drawing into her backpack, and Isabella beamed with pride. Trevor admired the artwork too, and soon all 3 were settled on their usual blanket with books and snacks spread around them. Today, Nicole had brought letter-shaped crackers and a simple board game that involved matching pictures to words. As Isabella engaged enthusiastically with the activities, speaking more sounds and even attempting a few whispered words, James took a deep breath and made his move. He got out of his car and walked across the street toward the playground, his heart beating faster than it did during major business negotiations. Nicole noticed him approaching first and looked up with curiosity rather than alarm. There was something in her expression that suggested she had been aware of his presence during their previous meetings. Isabella saw her father coming and looked between him and Nicole with obvious anxiety, as if she was afraid his presence might somehow make Nicole disappear. James stopped a respectful distance away and cleared his throat gently. "Excuse me," he said, his voice less confident than usual. "I'm Isabella's father, James Morrison. I wanted to thank you for what you've been doing for my daughter." Nicole stood up gracefully and extended her hand with a warm smile. "Hello, Mr. Morrison. I'm Nicole Washington and this is my son Trevor. Isabella is an absolute treasure. We love spending time with her." James shook her hand, surprised by the firmness of her grip and the directness of her gaze. She was even more striking up close, with intelligent eyes and a presence that radiated both strength and kindness. "Please call me James, and I have to ask what you've accomplished with Isabella in just 2 visits. It's extraordinary. She hasn't spoken since her mother died 8 months ago. And now she's making sounds, attempting words. How did you know what to do?" Nicole glanced at Isabella, who was watching their interaction with worried eyes, and knelt down to the child's level first. "Your daddy just wants to say, hello, sweetheart. We're all friends here." Isabella relaxed visibly and nodded, then made a soft sound that approximated daddy. It was the first time she had acknowledged James verbally in months. Standing back up, Nicole spoke thoughtfully. "I'm a single mother myself, and I know how much children need patience, consistency, and unconditional love, especially when they're hurting. Isabella just needed someone to meet her where she was instead of where everyone thought she should be." James felt a lump in his throat. "I've tried everything, the best therapists, specialists, treatment programs. Nothing worked but you. You've given me my daughter back in just a few days." Nicole's expression grew compassionate. "Sometimes healing doesn't come from experts or expensive treatments. Sometimes it comes from simple human connection and feeling safe enough to be vulnerable again." She paused, watching Isabella and Trevor playing together on the swings. "I lost my husband 2 years ago and Trevor went through his own difficult period. I understand what it's like to watch your child suffer and feel helpless to fix it." The honesty in her voice and the parallel loss they had experienced created an instant understanding between them. James felt something shift inside him, a recognition that this woman understood his pain in a way that all the professionals he'd hired never could. "I have a proposition," James said carefully. "I want to pay you for the time you're spending with Isabella. Maybe arrange for regular sessions or tutoring, whatever you think would help her continue progressing." Nicole's expression immediately grew guarded, and she shook her head firmly. "Mr. Morris and James I appreciate the offer, but I'm not spending time with Isabella for money. I genuinely care about her and Trevor adores her too. You can't pay someone to love your child." James quickly held up his hands, realizing his mistake. In his world, every problem had a financial solution, but he was learning that Isabella's healing couldn't be purchased. "I'm sorry that came out wrong. I don't know how to properly express my gratitude, and I'm terrified that this arrangement might not continue." Nicole studied his face for a moment, seeing the genuine fear and desperation behind his wealth and success. "What if we simply arranged for the children to have regular play dates? Not as a business transaction, but as friends. Isabella clearly benefits from Trevor's company, and he loves having a friend too." Relief washed over James' face. "You would do that? Regular play dates?" "Of course," Nicole smiled. "Children need other children. And Isabella is a sweet girl who brings out the best in Trevor. Would weekends work better than weekday afternoons? I know you must have a demanding schedule. James was struck by her consideration for his circumstances without judgment. Actually, I've been leaving work early for these playground visits, spending time with Isabella. Seeing her happy again, it's become the most important part of my day. Nicole's expression softened further. That's wonderful, James. Isabella needs her father just as much as she needs friends. Maybe we could arrange weekend play dates at your home. I could bring some activities and the children could play in a more comfortable setting. The suggestion was perfect. It would allow Isabella to associate positive feelings with home again, something she had struggled with since her mother's death. That would be incredible. Could you come this Saturday? I could arrange lunch or dinner. Whatever works best. Saturday lunch sounds perfect, Nicole agreed. I'll bring some art supplies and games. Isabella seems to respond well to creative activities. As they finalized plans, Isabella and Trevor ran over, both excited about the prospect of playing together at Isabella's house. Isabella whispered something to Trevor, who grinned and nodded, then ran to his mother. Mom, Bella wants to show me her room and her toys. Trevor announced, can we really come to her house? Nicole looked at her son's excitement and Isabella's hopeful face. Yes, we can come visit on Saturday. Both children cheered and Isabella actually clapped her hands with joy. As Nicole and Trevor prepared to leave, Isabella hugged Nicole tightly and whispered against her ear, thank you. It was the clearest word she had spoken yet. And both James and Nicole felt the weight of progress and possibility in those simple syllables. Saturday morning found James in a state of nervous energy he hadn't experienced since his first major business presentation. He had spent Friday evening having his housekeeper, Mrs. Chin, help him transform his normally austere home into something more welcoming for children. They had moved breakable objects out of reach, set up a craft station in the sunroom, and stocked the kitchen with child-friendly snacks. Isabella was vibrating with excitement, changing her outfit 3 times before settling on her favorite purple dress and matching hair bow. She had gathered an impressive collection of toys to show Trevor and had even attempted to make a welcome sign for Nicole using the letter sounds she had learned. The letters were shaky and some were backwards, but it was her first attempt at independent writing since the accident. When the doorbell rang at noon, Isabella ran to answer it with James close behind. Nicole and Trevor stood on the doorstep, Nicole carrying a bag of supplies and Trevor holding a small gift wrapped in colorful paper. Both were dressed nicely, but casually, and Nicole looked around at the impressive mansion with appreciation rather than intimidation. Welcome to our home, James said, stepping aside to let them in. Isabella immediately grabbed Trevor's hand and began pulling him toward the staircase, chattering in her mixture of sounds and whispered words. Slow down. Sweetheart, Nicole laughed gently. Let Trevor catch his breath first. She turned to James with an apologetic smile. I hope you don't mind, but Trevor insisted on bringing Isabella a gift. He used his allowance money to buy her something special. Trevor proudly presented his wrapped package to Isabella, who accepted it with wide eyes. Inside was a beautiful set of colored pencils and a sketch pad along with a small note that read, for my friend Bella, in Trevor's careful handwriting. Isabella's face lit up with pure joy, and she whispered, thank you, Trevor. Then in a moment that brought tears to both adults' eyes, she ran to Nicole and hugged her tightly. Thank you, Mama Nicole. The word Mama hung in the air for a moment. Nicole's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't correct Isabella or make a big deal of it. Instead, she hugged the little girl back and said softly, you're so welcome, sweet girl. James felt his heart clench at the naturalness of the exchange. Isabella had never called anyone Mama since her mother died, but with Nicole, it seemed to flow effortlessly. There was something profoundly right about seeing his daughter in the arms of this caring woman. Should we start with the house tour? James suggested, needing a moment to compose himself. Isabella nodded eagerly and took both Trevor's and Nicole's hands, leading them through the spacious rooms. As they walked, James found himself seeing his home through Nicole's eyes. Beautiful but cold, impressive, but lacking the warmth that made a house feel like a home. Isabella's room was a pink paradise that had been lovingly decorated by her late mother. Photos of mother and daughter covered the dresser and stuffed animals filled every corner. Trevor admired everything with genuine enthusiasm, and Nicole praised Isabella's possessions with authentic interest. What a beautiful room, Nicole said, sitting on Isabella's bed and looking around at the photos. Your mommy was very pretty and she had excellent taste in decorating. Isabella climbed onto the bed next to Nicole and picked up a framed photo of herself with her mother. She looked at it for a moment, then at Nicole and whispered, Mommy in heaven, like Trevor's daddy. Nicole nodded gently. That's right, sweetheart, but you know what? Mommies and daddies who go to heaven leave behind so much love that it stays with us forever. Look at this beautiful room she made for you, and look at how much your daddy loves you. Isabella considered this seriously, then put the photo down and snuggled against Nicole's side. You love me, too. Nicole's voice was thick with emotion as she answered, yes, sweet girl, I love you very much. After the house tour, they settled in the sunroom where Nicole unpacked her bag of activities. She had brought materials for making friendship bracelets, watercolor paints, and a beginner's cookbook for children. I thought we could make lunch together, she explained to James. Cooking is a wonderful way for children to learn and have fun at the same time. James, who hadn't cooked a meal in years, found himself enthusiastically joining the project. Under Nicole's patient guidance, they made homemade pizza with Isabella and Trevor designing their own individual pizzas with various toppings. Isabella was more animated than James had seen her since the accident, laughing at Trevor's silly topping combinations and carefully arranging her pepperoni in the shape of a heart. My mommy taught me to make pizza, Isabella whispered to Nicole as they worked. It was the first time she had mentioned her mother without sadness, and James felt a surge of gratitude toward Nicole for creating a safe space for these memories. She sounds like she was a wonderful teacher, Nicole replied warmly. I bet you would be so proud of how well you're making this pizza. As their pizzas baked, Nicole set up the watercolor station, and soon both children were absorbed in creating colorful masterpieces. Isabella painted a picture of their playground meeting stick figures of herself, Trevor and Nicole, under a bright sun. Trevor painted his family, including Isabella and James, as new additions to their circle. James found himself drawn into conversation with Nicole as they watched the children paint. She told him about her work as a part-time administrative assistant at a medical office, her dreams of returning to school to become a teacher, and the challenges of raising Trevor alone on a limited income. Her stories were filled with humor and resilience, and James was struck by her strength and positivity despite the hardship she had faced. Trevor is lucky to have such a dedicated mother, James said sincerely. And I'm grateful every day that Isabella found you both, Nicole smiled, wiping a smudge of paint from Isabella's cheek. Sometimes the best things in life come from unexpected places. I never imagined that taking Trevor to the playground would lead to such a beautiful friendship. As the afternoon progressed, James watched Nicole move through his home with natural grace, making everyone feel comfortable and loved. She complimented Mrs. Chin on the delicious lunch sides, helped Isabella clean up her art supplies without being asked, and made sure Trevor felt included in every activity. When it came time for Nicole and Trevor to leave, Isabella's face fell dramatically. Can't you stay longer? She pleaded, her voice stronger and clearer than it had been all day. Nicole knelt down to Isabella's level and spoke gently. We had such a wonderful time today. But Trevor and I need to go home now. But you know what? We can do this again soon if your daddy says it's okay. Isabella looked at James with hopeful eyes and he nodded immediately. Of course, how about next Saturday? Both children cheered and Isabella ran to hug Nicole goodbye. I love you, Mama Nicole, she whispered, and James saw Nicole's eyes fill with tears again. I love you too, Isabella, Nicole whispered back, holding the little girl close. As James walked Nicole and Trevor to the door, he felt compelled to express what was in his heart. Nicole, I don't know how to properly thank you for what you've given us today. Isabella hasn't been this happy or talkative since we lost her mother. Nicole turned to face him, and James was struck by the kindness and understanding in her eyes. James, seeing Isabella come alive again is thanks enough. She's a special little girl who just needed some extra love and patience. After they left, James found Isabella in the sunroom looking at the paintings they had made. She held up her picture and pointed to the figure representing Nicole. Mama Nicole makes me happy, Daddy. James sat down beside his daughter and pulled her onto his lap. She makes me happy, too, sweetheart. Very happy. That night, Isabella fell asleep clutching the sketch pad Trevor had given her. And for the first time since the accident, James heard her humming softly to herself before drifting off. The sound of his daughter's voice, full of contentment and hope, was the most beautiful music he had ever heard. The following weeks fell into a rhythm that transformed both households. Nicole and Trevor became regular fixtures at the Morrison mansion every Saturday and sometimes during the week as well. Isabella's progress was remarkable. She was speaking in short sentences now, laughing frequently and showing interest in the world around her again. James found himself looking forward to these visits with an intensity that surprised him. It wasn't just about Isabella's healing anymore, though that remained his primary focus. He was drawn to Nicole's warmth, her wisdom, and the way she brought life and joy into his previously sterile home. She never seemed intimidated by his wealth or status, treating him simply as Isabella's father and a friend. One particular Saturday in November, Nicole arrived with ingredients for making Christmas cookies. Even though it was still early in the season, it's never too early to start celebrating, she explained to Isabella and Trevor, who were bouncing with excitement at the prospect of baking. As they worked in the kitchen, flour dusting every surface, and Christmas music playing softly in the background, Isabella was more talkative than ever. She chatted about school, her friends, and her dreams, with Nicole listening attentively to every word and responding with genuine interest. Mama Nicole, Isabella said carefully, rolling out cookie dough. Can I tell you a secret? Nicole smiled and leaned in conspiratorially. Of course, sweet girl. I'm very good at keeping secrets. Isabella glanced around to make sure Trevor and James were busy with their own cookie cutting stations, then whispered, I want you to be my mommy for real. Not just pretend. Nicole's hand stilled on her rolling pin, and James, who had overheard despite Isabella's attempt at secrecy, felt his heart skip a beat. Nicole looked at Isabella with eyes full of love and tenderness. Isabella, honey, being your friend and loving you like I do is already very real. Nicole said gently, you don't need to pretend anything with me. Isabella considered this seriously, her small brow furrowed in concentration. But Trevor has you all the time. I only get you on Saturdays and sometimes other days. I want you all the time, too. The innocent honesty of this statement hit both adults like a physical blow. James saw Nicole's eyes fill with tears, and he felt his own throat tighten with emotion. Trevor, who had been decorating a star-shaped cookie, looked up and joined the conversation. Maybe Bella could come live with us, Trevor suggested with the straightforward logic of a child. Then we could be together all the time, and Mom could tuck both of us in every night. Nicole looked between the two children, both staring at her with hopeful eyes, and struggled to find the right words. James could see her wrestling with emotions, and decided to step in. That's a wonderful idea, Trevor, James said carefully. But Isabella and I live together because I'm her daddy, just like you and your mom live together. Isabella's face fell slightly, but then she brightened with sudden inspiration. What if Mama Nicole and Trevor came to live with us? This house is really big and there's lots of room. The suggestion hung in the air like a held breath. James felt his pulse quicken at the idea, surprised by how much he wanted it to be possible. Nicole looked overwhelmed by the children's innocent planning of their future family arrangements. These are big decisions that grown-ups have to think about very carefully, Nicole said diplomatically, but her voice was shaky with emotion. Right now, let's focus on making the most beautiful cookies in the world. As they continued baking, the conversation shifted to lighter topics, but the undercurrent of longing remained. Isabella stayed close to Nicole's side, and Trevor began including James more naturally in their activities, as if they were already practicing being a blended family. When it came time to decorate the cookies, Nicole had brought an assortment of colorful icings and sprinkles. Isabella worked meticulously on a heart-shaped cookie, covering it in pink icing and carefully spelling out love with silver sprinkles. When she finished, she presented it proudly to Nicole. This is for you, Mama Nicole, because you taught my heart to be happy again. Nicole accepted the cookie with trembling hands, tears streaming down her face. She pulled Isabella into a tight hug and whispered, you taught my heart to be happy again, too, sweet girl. James watched the exchange with a full heart, realizing that somewhere along the way, he had fallen completely in love with this remarkable woman who had brought his daughter back to life. The thought both thrilled and terrified him because he could see that Nicole was fighting the same feelings. As the afternoon winded down and they cleaned up the kitchen together, Isabella made another pronouncement that stopped everyone in their tracks. She was sitting at the kitchen island swinging her legs and licking icing off her fingers when she looked directly at Nicole and said clearly, I love you, Mommy, not Mama Nicole, as she had been saying, but Mommy, the title she had reserved for her birth mother and hadn't used since the accident. Nicole froze her hand halfway to her mouth with a cookie and stared at Isabella with wide eyes. Isabella, Nicole said softly, honey, I love you too so very much. But your mommy is in heaven, remember? I'm Mama Nicole. Isabella shook her head firmly. My first mommy is in heaven and she sent me you to be my second mommy. That's how it works when hearts are broken. They get fixed with new love, but the old love stays. Too. The wisdom and acceptance in Isabella's words left both adults speechless. Trevor nodded sagely as if this made perfect sense to him and added, like how I have my dad in heaven and Mr. James here to teach me guy stuff. James felt something crack open in his chest at Trevor's casual acceptance of him as a father figure. This little boy, who had lost his own father so young, was willing to let James fill that role with the same openness that Isabella was showing toward Nicole. Nicole sat down heavily on one of the kitchen stools, overwhelmed by the children's innocent wisdom and their ability to love without reservation. You two are very special children, she managed to say, and very smart about how love works. Isabella climbed down from her stool and walked over to Nicole, taking her face in her small hands with surprising gentleness. It's okay to be scared, Mommy, she said with the insight of a child who had learned too much about loss too young. Daddy was scared too, but love makes the scared go away. Nicole looked over Isabella's head at James, and in that moment, they both acknowledged what had been building between them for weeks. The love they felt for these children had somehow blossomed into something deeper, something that encompassed all four of them as a potential family. Your daddy is a very good man, Nicole said to Isabella, her eyes still locked with James's. And you are a very lucky little girl. Isabella beamed and hugged Nicole tightly. And you're a very good mommy. And Trevor is the best brother ever and we're all very lucky. That evening, after Nicole and Trevor had gone home with a container full of cookies, Isabella asked James to tuck her in. As he pulled her covers up to her chin, she looked at him with serious eyes. Daddy, do you love Mama Nicole too? James felt his breath catch, but he knew his daughter deserved honesty. Yes, sweetheart, I love her very much. Isabella smiled sleepily. Good. That means she can stay forever and ever. As James kissed his daughter goodnight, He realized that Isabella had articulated exactly what he wanted most in the world for Nicole to stay forever and ever. The question was whether he had the courage to ask her to. The weeks following the cookie-making day brought a subtle shift in the dynamic between James and Nicole. Their conversations grew longer and more personal, extending well beyond discussions of the children's activities. James found himself sharing stories about his late wife, his struggles with single parenthood, and his fears about failing Isabella. Nicole, in turn, opened up about her dreams deferred, her challenges as a single mother, and her own journey through grief. During one particularly memorable Saturday, Nicole arrived to find Isabella running a fever and feeling unwell. Instead of postponing their visit, Nicole immediately shifted into caregiver mode, bringing Isabella soup from the kitchen, reading her stories, and sitting by her bedside until the little girl fell asleep. James watched from the doorway as Nicole gently brushed Isabella's hair back from her forehead and hummed a soft lullaby. The tenderness in her actions and the love in her eyes confirmed what he already knew. Nicole didn't just care for Isabella out of kindness or obligation. She genuinely loved his daughter as if she were her own. "You're a natural at this," James said quietly when Nicole finally joined him in the hallway. Nicole smiled tiredly. "Isabella makes it easy. She's such a sweet child and she's been through so much. When children are hurting, all they really need is someone to love them unconditionally and make them feel safe." "Is that what you did for Trevor after your husband died?" James asked gently. Nicole nodded, her expression growing thoughtful. "Trevor was only 5 when his father died in that construction accident. He stopped eating, stopped playing, stopped being the happy little boy he had been. I was grieving too, but I knew he needed me to be strong. Some nights I would cry myself to sleep after he was asleep. But during the day I focused entirely on helping him heal." James felt a deep admiration for her strength and resilience. "How did you manage financially? Raising a child alone couldn't have been easy." Nicole's expression grew slightly uncomfortable, as if she wasn't used to discussing her struggles. "It wasn't easy," she admitted. "David's life insurance helped for a while, but it wasn't much. I had to work 2 jobs for the first year cleaning offices at night. After Trevor went to bed and then the day job at the medical office. I've been wanting to go back to school to become a teacher. But between working and raising Trevor, there never seemed to be time or money for college." An idea began forming in James' mind, but he pushed it aside for the moment. Instead, he focused on the woman beside him who had sacrificed so much for her son and was now extending that same selfless love to Isabella. "Trevor is lucky to have such a dedicated mother," James said sincerely. "And so is Isabella in her own way." Nicole looked at him with surprise. "James, I hope you don't feel like I'm overstepping boundaries with Isabella. I know she's been calling me mommy, and if that makes you uncomfortable." James quickly shook his head. "Nicole, what you've given Isabella is priceless. She was disappearing before I met you, becoming a shadow of herself. Now she's vibrant and happy and talking again. If she wants to call you mommy, then you've earned that title through love and dedication." Nicole's eyes filled with tears. "She's filled a hole in my heart that I didn't even realize was there. I always wanted more children, but after David died, I assumed that dream was over. Isabella makes me feel like a complete mother again." The conversation was interrupted by Isabella calling softly from her room. Both adults rushed to her side and Isabella reached for Nicole with fever-bright eyes. "Mommy, will you sing the song again?" Isabella whispered. Nicole immediately began humming the lullaby and Isabella's eyes fluttered closed with a contented smile. Later that evening, after Isabella's fever had broken and she was sleeping peacefully, James and Nicole sat in his study with cups of coffee. Trevor had fallen asleep on the couch in the living room and the house was quiet and peaceful. "Nicole," James began carefully, "I have something I'd like to discuss with you, and I hope you'll hear me out completely before you respond." Nicole set down her coffee cup and gave him her full attention. "Of course." James took a deep breath, knowing that what he was about to propose could change everything between them. "I want to offer to pay for your college education so you can become a teacher." Nicole's eyes widened and she immediately began shaking her head. "James, no, I can't accept that. It's too much, too generous. Please let me finish." James said gently, "This isn't charity, and it's not about me trying to buy anything from you. You've given Isabella something that no amount of money could purchase. You've given her back her voice, her joy, her ability to love and trust again. This would be my way of saying thank you and investing in someone who I believe will make an extraordinary teacher." Nicole stood up and walked to the window, her back to James. "I don't know what to say. It's incredibly generous, but I've always been independent. I've taken care of myself and Trevor without help." James joined her at the window, careful not to stand too close. "I understand your independence, and I admire it. But sometimes accepting help isn't about weakness. It's about recognizing that people care about you and want to support your dreams." Nicole turned to face him, and James could see the internal struggle in her expression. "If I were to consider this and I'm not saying yes, what would you expect in return?" "Nothing," James said immediately. "No strings attached. No expectations, just the hope that you'll continue being part of Isabella's life because she needs you." And honestly, I need you too. The last part slipped out before James could stop it. And he saw Nicole's eyes widen with surprise. He hadn't planned to reveal his feelings yet. But the honesty felt right. James, Nicole said softly, what are you saying? James decided to take the leap. I'm saying that somewhere along the way, I've fallen in love with you, Nicole, not just because of what you've done for Isabella. Although that's how it started, I love your strength, your kindness, your wisdom, and the way you make everyone around you feel valued and loved. I love how you've brought warmth and laughter back into our home. Nicole stared at him for a long moment, and James held his breath, waiting for her response. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been fighting the same feelings, she admitted. I love Isabella as if she were my own daughter, and I found myself caring about you more than I ever expected to. But James, we come from such different worlds. You're a billionaire and I'm a single mother working an entry-level job. How could that possibly work? James stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. It works because love doesn't care about bank accounts or job titles. It works because our children love each other and we love them. It works because we understand each other's pain and we've helped each other heal. Nicole's resolve seemed to waver, and James could see the love in her eyes that she was trying so hard to deny. The college offer, she said quietly, is that connected to your feelings for me? No, James said firmly. Even if you told me right now that you could never have romantic feelings for me, I would still want to help you achieve your dream of becoming a teacher. You deserve that opportunity, and any school would be lucky to have you. Nicole was quiet for a long moment, considering his words. Finally, she looked up at him with tears in her eyes. Okay, she said softly. Okay, to which part? James asked, his heart racing. Nicole smiled through her tears. Okay to all of it. Okay to letting you help with school. Okay to admitting that I love you too. Okay to seeing where this beautiful, unexpected love story takes us. James felt his heart soar as he stepped closer and gently yooped her face in his hands. Are you sure? I'm sure, Nicole whispered. Isabella was right. Love makes the scared go away. When James kissed her, soft and tender and full of promise, it felt like coming home. In the distance, they could hear Isabella's peaceful breathing and Trevor's soft snores from the living room. And James knew that this was what family was supposed to feel like. Complete, loving, and absolutely right. 3 months into the new year, the Morrison household had been transformed beyond recognition. Nicole was enrolled in an accelerated teaching program at the local university, attending classes 3 days a week while Isabella was at school. On those days, Trevor stayed with James and Isabella after school, and the three of them had developed their own routines and inside jokes. Isabella was thriving in every way imaginable. She was speaking clearly and confidently, excelling in school, and had made several new friends. Her teacher commented on how much more outgoing and happy she had become, noting that whatever changes had occurred at home were clearly benefiting her greatly. Trevor had blossomed under James' gentle guidance, discovering a love for building model planes and reading adventure stories. James found immense joy in teaching Trevor about business concepts in kid-friendly ways and watching the boy's analytical mind work through problems. Trevor had started calling him Dad James, which never failed to make James' heart swell with pride and love. Nicole spent most evenings at the Morrison house, helping with homework, cooking dinner, and creating the warm family atmosphere that had been missing since Isabella's mother died. Textbooks were scattered throughout the house, and James loved seeing evidence of her dedication to her studies alongside their family life. The relationship between James and Nicole had deepened naturally and beautifully. They supported each other through daily challenges, celebrated small victories together, and had long conversations about their dreams for the future. James had never felt so completely understood and accepted by another person, and Nicole had flourished under his encouragement and support. On a particularly beautiful Saturday in early spring, James knew the time had come to make their arrangement permanent. He had been carrying an engagement ring in his pocket for 2 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. The ring wasn't ostentatious despite his wealth. It was a classic solitaire diamond that Nicole would actually wear, elegant but not overwhelming. That morning, he suggested they all go to the playground where everything had started. For old time's sake, he explained, and both children were enthusiastic about visiting their special place. As they arrived at the familiar playground, Isabella immediately ran to their swing set with Trevor close behind. Nicole settled on the bench where she had first read stories to Isabella, and James sat beside her, his heart racing with nervous anticipation. Do you ever think about that first day? James asked, watching their children play together with easy familiarity. Nicole smiled, following his gaze. Every day, I never imagined that deciding to speak to a sad little girl on a swing would change my entire life. Changed my life, too, James said softly. You saved us both. Nicole, Isabella and me. Nicole turned to look at him, her expression tender. We saved each other, James. That's what families do. The word families gave James the opening he needed. He stood up and walked to where the children were playing, calling them over. Isabella, Trevor, I need your help with something very important. Both children ran over eagerly, always ready to assist with grown-up matters. James knelt down to their level and pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal the sparkling ring inside. "I want to ask Mama Nicole to marry me," he said seriously. "But first, I need to know if you two think that's a good idea." Isabella's gasp of delight was audible across the playground. "Really, Daddy? Really, 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 really?" James confirmed, smiling at his daughter's excitement. Trevor examined the ring critically, then nodded approvingly. "It's very shiny. Mom likes shiny things, but not too shiny. This is perfect." Isabella clapped her hands together. "Can I be the flower girl? And can Trevor be the ring boy? And can we all live together forever and ever?" "If Mama Nicole says yes," James said, glancing back at Nicole, who was watching the scene with tears streaming down her face. "Then yes to all of those things. She'll say yes," Isabella said confidently. "She loves us just like we love her." James stood up and walked back to Nicole, his heart pounding. He had presented to boards of directors, negotiated million-dollar deals, and made decisions that affected thousands of employees, but nothing had ever felt as important as this moment. "Nicole Washington," he said, dropping to one knee in front of the bench where she had first shown kindness to his broken daughter, "you brought light back into our lives when we didn't even remember what happiness felt like. You loved Isabella unconditionally when she couldn't speak. And you loved me despite all my flaws and fears." Nicole was crying openly now, her hands pressed to her mouth as she listened. "I love you completely," James continued, "not just for what you've given us, but for who you are. Kind, strong, wise, and beautiful inside and out. Will you marry me? Will you be Isabella's mother and let me be Trevor's father? Will you make our family official?" Nicole looked at James, kneeling before her, then at Isabella and Trevor, who were holding hands and watching with hopeful expressions, then back at the man who had somehow become her entire world. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, James Morrison, I will marry you." The children's cheers could probably be heard 3 blocks away as James slipped the ring onto Nicole's finger and kissed her while Isabella and Trevor danced around them in celebration. "We're going to be a real family," Isabella shouted joyfully. "We already are a real family," Nicole said, pulling both children into the hug she was sharing with James. "Now we just get to make it official." As they held each other on the playground where their love story began, James felt a profound sense of completion. The scared, broken man who had watched his silent daughter swing alone just months ago was gone, replaced by someone who understood that the best things in life couldn't be bought or controlled. They could only be received with gratitude and cherished with care. "I love you all so much," Nicole whispered into their group hug. "We love you too, Mommy," Isabella and Trevor said in unison. And James knew that every difficult moment of the past year had been worth it to arrive at this perfect love-filled moment. The wedding planning process revealed just how naturally Nicole and James worked together as partners. They decided on a small intimate ceremony in the garden of James' estate. With only close friends and family in attendance, Nicole's parents flew in from Georgia, tears in their eyes as they met Isabella and James for the first time. James' business associates were surprised by his choice to have a modest ceremony rather than the lavish affair they expected. But James didn't care about impressing anyone except his bride and children. Isabella threw herself into wedding preparations with enthusiasm that hadn't been seen since before her mother's death. She helped Nicole choose flowers, picked out her own flower girl dress, purple naturally, and practiced walking down the aisle with the perfect combination of sanity and excitement. Trevor took his role as ring bearer very seriously, practicing his walk and ensuring he understood exactly when to present the rings. Nicole's transformation over the past months was remarkable. The stress lines around her eyes had softened, and she carried herself with new confidence. James' support had allowed her to flourish in her studies, and she was graduating with honors just 2 weeks before the wedding. She had already been offered a position teaching second grade at Isabella's school. Starting in the fall, the night before the wedding, Nicole found James in his study, reviewing some papers, but clearly too excited to concentrate. Isabella and Trevor were having a sleepover in Isabella's room, giggling and whispering about the next day's festivities. "Second thoughts?" Nicole asked teasingly, settling into the chair across from his desk. James looked up and smiled, his eyes soft with love. "Only about waiting this long to ask you. I should have proposed that first day at the playground." Nicole laughed. "We needed time to build trust and make sure this was right for the children. Isabella needed to heal, Trevor needed to feel secure, and we needed to fall in love with each other, not just the idea of being a family." "And have we?" James asked, coming around the desk to sit on the arm of her chair. "Fallen in love with each other?" Nicole reached up to touch his face gently. "Completely and irrevocably. I never thought I could love someone the way I love David. But what I feel for you is different and just as deep. You've shown me that hearts can hold more love than we ever imagined." James kissed her palm, then held her hand against his cheek. "Tomorrow, Isabella will officially have a mother again and Trevor will have a father. Are you ready for that responsibility? I've been their parent in my heart for months," Nicole said softly. "The paperwork will just make it legal. Are you ready to help raise a boy who isn't biologically yours but needs a father figure?" Trevor already feels like my son, James replied without hesitation. Biology doesn't make a family, love does. The wedding day dawned bright and clear with spring flowers blooming throughout the garden. Nicole wore a simple but elegant dress that made her look radiant, and James couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked down the aisle between their children. Isabella scattered rose petals with careful precision, and Trevor carried the rings with the importance of someone handling the crown jewels. The ceremony was officiated by the pastor from Nicole's childhood church, who had flown in specially for the occasion. As they exchanged vows, both Isabella and Trevor stood beside them. Included in every promise, I promise to love and cherish you, Nicole said to James, and to be the mother Isabella deserves, helping her remember her first mother with love while creating new memories together. I promise to support your dreams and encourage your strength, James replied, and to be the father Trevor needs, honoring his biological father's memory while being present for every milestone to come. When the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, Isabella shouted, "We're a family," before they had even kissed, causing laughter to ripple through the small gathering of guests. The reception was held on the lawn with tables set under twinkling lights. Isabella and Trevor gave a joint speech that they had prepared in secret, thanking everyone for coming to celebrate their new old family and expressing their excitement about living together officially. Before Mom and Nicole came, Daddy was sad and I was quiet, Isabella said into the microphone with the confidence of a child who had found her voice. Now we laugh every day and have dance parties in the kitchen. Trevor nodded seriously and added, and before Dad James came, it was just me and Mom. Which was good, but now we have a bigger family and I have a sister and someone to teach me guys stuff. As the evening progressed, James found himself constantly amazed by how right everything felt. Nicole danced with Trevor to a slow song, both of them laughing as she let him stand on her feet. Isabella insisted on having a special dance with James, standing on his shoes just like Trevor had done with Nicole. "Are you happy, Daddy?" Isabella asked as they swayed to the music. "Happier than I ever thought possible," James answered honestly. "Good," Isabella said with satisfaction. "Mommy makes everything better, doesn't she?" "She really does, sweetheart." Later that evening, after the last guests had left and the children were finally asleep, James and Nicole sat on their bedroom balcony, still in their wedding clothes, talking about the perfect day they had shared. "No regrets?" James asked, sliding his arm around his new wife. "Only that we can't live this day over and over again," Nicole replied, snuggling against his side. "Though I'm excited about all the days to come. Trevor and Isabella are officially brother and sister now," James observed. "And you're officially Isabella's mother and you're officially Trevor's father," Nicole added. "Our family is complete." As they sat together under the stars, both felt the profound contentment that comes from knowing you're exactly where you belong with exactly the right people, building exactly the life you were meant to live. 1 year after the wedding, the Morrison family had settled into a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. Nicole was thriving in her teaching position at Isabella's school, where she had quickly become a favorite among students and parents alike. Her classroom was known for its warmth and creativity, and she had started an after-school art program that Isabella and several of her friends attended. Trevor had grown 3 and gained confidence in equal measure. He was excelling in school, had joined the chess club, and had developed a passion for astronomy that James encouraged by purchasing a telescope for their backyard. Trevor still honored his biological father's memory, but he now confidently introduced James as "my dad" to new friends and teachers. Isabella had transformed from the silent, withdrawn child she had been into a vibrant, confident girl who spoke her mind and pursued her interests with enthusiasm. She had started taking piano lessons and was learning to cook from Nicole, proudly announcing that she wanted to be a chef when she grew up, just like Mommy was when she made us into a family. The biggest surprise had come 6 months after the wedding when Nicole announced she was pregnant. The news had sent Isabella and Trevor into ecstasies of excitement about becoming big siblings, and James had cried tears of joy at the prospect of having a biological child with the woman he loved, while knowing it wouldn't change his feelings for Trevor one bit. On this particular Saturday, they were all at their special playground, the place where everything had begun. Nicole was noticeably pregnant now, glowing with health and happiness as she sat on their favorite bench watching James push Isabella and Trevor on the swings. At 8 months pregnant, she was taking things easier, but she still insisted on their weekly playground visits. "Higher, Dad," Trevor called out, using the title that always made James' heart swell with pride. "Be careful," Nicole called out with the universal concern of mothers everywhere. "We don't need any emergency room visits today." Isabella laughed and pumped her legs to gain height on her own. "Mommy, you worry too much. We're being safe." As James continued pushing the children, he reflected on how dramatically their lives had changed since that first day he had sat in his car watching his silent daughter swing alone. Now the playground was filled with laughter, chatter, and the kind of family interaction he had once thought was lost forever. Nicole shifted on the bench, placing her hand on her growing belly as the baby kicked. Isabella noticed immediately and climbed down from her swing to rush over. Is the baby dancing? Isabella asked, placing her small hand next to Nicole's on her stomach. Something like that, Nicole laughed. I think he or she is excited to meet you all. Trevor joined them, still amazed by the concept of a baby growing inside Nicole. Do you think it's a boy or a girl? We've decided to be surprised, James said, settling beside Nicole on the bench and putting his arm around her. But either way, this baby is going to be very lucky to have you two as big siblings. Isabella beamed with pride. I'm going to teach the baby how to paint and how to bake cookies and how to be brave when you're scared. And I'm going to teach the baby about stars and planes and how to build things. Trevor added seriously, and how to be a good person like Mom and Dad taught me. Nicole felt tears prick her eyes at Trevor's words. Despite all the love and security they had given him, he still sometimes surprised her with his gratitude and maturity. You know what? Nicole said, looking around at the playground that had brought them together. I think we should bring the baby here for their first playground visit just like we all met here. That's perfect, James agreed. This place is special for our family. Isabella suddenly grew thoughtful. Mommy, do you think my first mama knows about you and the baby and how happy we are? Nicole considered the question carefully, understanding how important it was to Isabella to maintain connection with her biological mother's memory. I think she does, sweetheart. And I think she's very happy that you have so much love in your life. I think so, too, Isabella said with satisfaction. I think she picked you special to take care of me and Daddy. Trevor nodded sagely, like how my first dad probably picked Dad James to take care of me and Mom. The children's ability to weave together their past and present into a cohesive story of love and family never ceased to amaze both adults. They had created a narrative where no one was forgotten, but everyone was included in their current happiness. As the afternoon sun began to set, they gathered their things to head home. Isabella and Trevor ran ahead, chasing each other and laughing while James helped Nicole to her feet. Any regrets? He asked the same question he had posed on their wedding night. Nicole looked at their children playing together, then at James' face full of love and contentment, then down at her belly where their third child was growing. Only that I can't thank that sad little girl on the swing for being brave enough to trust a stranger, Nicole said with a smile. If Isabella hadn't responded to me that first day, none of this would have happened. James kissed her temple gently. Then we'll have to make sure we teach all our children to be open to unexpected friendships and love. As they walked home together, Isabella skipping beside them and Trevor walking backwards so he could continue their conversation, Nicole reflected on the journey that had brought them here. A year and a half ago, she had been a struggling single mother with dreams deferred and a limited future. Now she was a teacher, a wife, a mother to 3 children, soon to be 4, and part of a family that exceeded her wildest dreams. Race you to the house, Isabella called out, and soon all 4 of them were walking as fast as Nicole's condition would allow, laughing and talking over each other in the way that families do. That night, as they tucked Isabella and Trevor into their respective beds, both children were already planning activities for their future sibling. We should teach the baby about the playground first, Isabella decided, and about how Mommy saved us all, and about how families can be made in different ways. But love is always the same, Trevor added wisely, after the children were asleep. James and Nicole sat in the nursery they had prepared for their new baby, surrounded by gifts from Isabella and Trevor and filled with the same warmth that now characterized their entire home. Do you think we'll be able to love this baby as much as we love Isabella and Trevor? Nicole asked, a common worry for parents expecting children in blended families. James took her hand and smiled confidently. Love doesn't divide when it multiplies, Nicole, it grows. Isabella and Trevor taught us that when they open their hearts to each other and to us, this baby will just add more love to what we already have. Nicole squeezed his hand, feeling the truth of his words. I never imagined I could be this happy. Sometimes I wake up afraid it's all a dream. It's not a dream, James assured her, placing his other hand on her belly as the baby kicked again. It's our beautiful reality built on love, patience, and the courage to trust in unexpected blessings. As they sat together in the soft glow of the nursery lamp, surrounded by evidence of their growing family and filled with anticipation for the future, both knew that their love story was far from over. It was just beginning a new chapter, one that would be written with the laughter of children, the warmth of unconditional love, and the joy that comes from finding your perfect place in the world. The playground where it all started would always hold a special place in their hearts. But home was no longer a place, it was the 4 of them together, soon to be 5, creating new memories and writing their own definition of happily ever after. Outside their window, the city sparkled with lights, and somewhere in that vast expanse, other lonely hearts were waiting for their own unexpected miracles. But inside the Morrison house, love had conquered fear, silence had given way to laughter, and a family had been born from the simple act of one person choosing to show kindness to another. Their story was proof that the most powerful force in the world isn't wealth or status or success. It's love offered freely and accepted with gratitude, capable of healing any wound and creating miracles that no amount of money could ever